this conversation only proves out at the end of the year whether, and it's not even about being right or wrong. I don't give a shit if I don't want the Canucks to make it. But what are the Flames trying to be? Like we just talked about Montreal. There's no way Montreal they're making the playoffs here. I don't think so. Did anyone have Montreal making a big jump? There weren't many people in the Flames side of the ledger saying, yeah, this is
Sportsbook sentiment at 81.
And so then they do make the playoffs, which I'm a believer in owners and players say you get a chance to make the playoffs, you go for the playoffs. Doesn't matter who we got to play Vegas. Well, too bad. That's your matchup. But is that the Flames in the Flames' best interest long term? Like, and you look at the Flames team and you give them credit for what they've done, absolutely. But their scoring is horrendous. And so, are you allowing this?
I'm not saying you add. I think I think if you're Craig Conroy, what you do is you sit back, and if you could get a lowercase addition, or if you could get the player that fits your age scheme and is going to be there for 5 years, of course you pull the trigger. If you can add that right shot center that everyone's been talking about, that's between 22 and 25 years old, of course. But I think short of that, unless there's something like, essentially free in the bargain bin that you could give your team as a little reward to say, hey, you guys have played your asses off all year. You've competed. I'm going to give you a little something to try and help. Otherwise, you are just there. You're not helping and you're not hurting. I don't think you subtract. I don't think you take away, because I think that also sends the wrong message, speaking of culture and what they've been trying to put into place here and how night and day different this team is in the room from last year. So I think you continue to try and foster that if you can, but you're not hampering, you're not helping. That's the general, just straight down the middle here.
They could upgrade on the Miramanov, Hanley playing top 4 minutes, and I don't think it would be expensive. That's kind of the tinker when you talk about that I would see making sense. Like those guys are either out of the lineup or they're playing with too much with Weegar. Like they're either popcorn or top 4. They're not cut out for that. Those guys are 6'7s all day. They could use one more.
We've known that since camp. That's the problem is we've watched that and said, oh yeah, no good.
No, I just saw, and I don't know to extend a fight because we can move on. But I saw your grimace when Frank suggested getting somebody in that 23.
Well, it's just everyone says it, but like, are they actually going to move first to get guys? Like, what are we talking about here? These are not cheap assets. But just find 23-year-old right shot centers. Like,
I think you would. I think they would move first. Unequivocally, would move first to do it.
And that's where the grimace comes in.
Why? How do you know what the first is going to be? We just talked about how shoddy the draft class is.
If you're finding a 20-whatever-year-old right shot centerman, it's a distressed asset and it has risk too.
What if it's okay?
Like so if they're good players, they're not traded. Like no one gives away great young centers.
Let's talk. So like, what if it's what if we're talking about Dylan Cousins? Let me preface that by saying I don't think the Flames have what it takes to interest Buffalo. I think they're poor trade partners, but let's just take that profile of player.
Yeah. So again, like it's going to be a first plus for Cousins. Like that's a huge spend for a team.
You're not doing it
1 year into a rebuild. Like they literally started tearing down a year ago with Lindholm, Hannafin, Tanev.
They're never going to be drafting in a position to get the guys that are true difference makers.
No, I disagree. If they're not getting elite goaltending, they're absolutely a top 8 pick and a lottery win away from stars.
But doesn't the way Wolf is playing this year actually change the timeline in the other direction?
It's been awesome, but again, like it's goaltending. So I love the kid. I love the development trajectory. I think he's going to be a number one in this league. I think he's proving to be an elite goaltender, but even great goaltenders have bad years. Like it's just, I could see this team thinking they're good and making the mistake of like adding the summer. And then all of a sudden he has like a 905 season that isn't elite and it's fine. And he'll get back to being a star again. And they're like, geez, we're really not close at all. Like this is all just goaltending here. I really believe if it's not Wolf here, this is one of the worst 8 to 10 rosters in the league.
Would you say that you're at all
pushback from me?
That you're at all guilty of putting too much in the draft?
No,
I think you are. I think
I think he's totally guilty.
Talk about distressed assets and that you make out as though like yes, lottery tickets and all that, and getting stars. It's not like they've been without. I mean, they have Matt Coronado and Connor Zary. These are all good players.
Those are
But
middle six players.
They're not stars,
They don't
right?
have top line guys.
They're not difference
So-
makers.
No.
They're not
They're good
drivers.
players. I like them,
Yeah.
but they don't have a star. They don't have game breakers.
Yeah.
Like you
But
need.
what if Dylan Cousins is? I'm not saying he is. I'm just saying, what if that type of profile? Those are the only guys that are likely available, right?
Yeah,
Guys that showed it at age 21 to hit 31 goals and 68 points as a 21-year-old. Okay, so is he closer to that, or is he closer to the 20 goal, 45, 50 point guy?
Yeah, like honestly,
Either way, if
you
I'm the
tell us
Flames,
what
I'm trying to
Dylan
find out. I'm going, hey, I want to know.
I'd
I'd rather answer that question for myself as opposed to taking a guy at 17th overall and hoping, wishing, praying that he's the next Scott Lawton.
Right, but what's it cost? Like, of course, you love the idea of Dylan Cousins, but all of a sudden, someone says it's Basha and a first and a player. You're like, shit, that's really expensive for a guy that might just be a middle six player. No,
I'm still doing it.
yeah, and again, I don't know. Like, I've heard a lot of great things about Cousins. I don't know where he's at. I don't see Buffalo almost ever.
And we
like, why? If he's good, why are the Sabres even moving him? Like, what's happening there? Please tell us. Are they that dysfunctional? Like, is this Eichel all over again? Or is it Jesse Puljujarvi where it's like, yeah, we drafted him for, we really like, oh, he's actually not a thing. He's on.
But wouldn't you want to find out? That's my only question.
First, if he's going to be on waivers in 3 years, like for
Eichel, Reinhardt,
I don't think he's
that
those guys, but yeah.
I think Dylan Cousins would be a great fit in Calgary. I don't know if they can get him. And I think that what happens here, and it happens, I say it every spring or every fall, there's so much talk about your own players and the buy-in, and then they go to camp and they got to play against the other top players from other organizations. You're like, well, maybe they're not that effing good. Like Basha you're in love with the guy, and that's great. He's never played, and you don't know what he's going to be, and he could turn out to be great. The only point I'm trying to make is that there's a little too much love for what we know as Flames. Sam Honzek again is back. Like, who is he? He's our first rounder. Would you give Cousins for Honzek?
They would laugh at you and ask for that plus.
But that's the point. But the point is, you're getting that kind of pick, but you don't want Cousins because you're what's the word I'm looking for? Fearful of giving away a pick. And it's not even the right term, but
I just
you
don't
know what I mean. You're putting so much.
That's all.
Well,
he might be.
But you're way more likely if you're the Flames and the range that they're going to be picking in to get a Mark Jankowski than you are.
Come on, like if they pick, how many
10th, good picks have they had?
Like what? You don't like Perrick at 9? Like,
but what if
their best chance at a star is the guy they took at 9?
And he's a guy that's never played and might never like.
Well, yeah. How many times are they going to be picking higher than 9 over the next 5 years?
Well, it depends. I mean,
that's my point.
If you trade Rasmus Andersson,
it's going the other direction with Wolf. You're trending more towards 15, 17, 18 than you are to 9.
Yeah,
this is the whole point I'm trying to make.
If you keep everyone and extend Rasmus, I agree. But it kind of doesn't really line up with their young guys. And I'm not here to say that every draft pick makes it, but there is a large quantity of 18 and 19-year-olds in their system, and many of them will be very good NHLers. The time to like supplement, like I look at Ottawa and it's like, yeah, they had all this young talent. It's going to happen at some point. They went too early on DeBrincat. They went too early on Chychrun. It was just
they went on the wrong guy. They didn't have a goaltender. They thought they had goaltenders. Who was the guy from stupid Pittsburgh they signed?
Matt Murray.
For big money, and he wasn't the guy, and most people knew he wasn't the guy. This Wolf has come in. You're in love with them.
Wolf changes
everything, yet you still, and you have this. I know what you want. You want all the kids coming through together at the same time, and that might not be their team, right? Like it might be a mixed bag of 35 and 22. Like you might not have 8 or 9 or 10 kids in the 25, right? 22 to 27.
This fan
doesn't
base
always work out that way.
This fan base wants is to get out of what we've seen for basically a quarter century, which is very mucky middle. And you're honestly, when's Wolf's prime? Give me his age, because I'll tell you how old your best players are at that point.
It's starting right now.
Yeah, and so now it's like, okay, well, if he's good, we got to re-sign Rasmus. He'll turn 30 the first month of probably an 8-year deal.
It doesn't mean that necessarily.
You're saying that.
Well, look, I think,
but it does change things. You now have a goalie that you feel really good about.
It's great.
I would think
all that means is you are drafting further away from where you really want to be. So now you need to readjust your expectations, because instead of having a chance to get a top 6 player, you're likely looking at middle 6 or bottom 6.
Yeah, you're looking at New Jersey and Florida's picks in the late 20s and 30s. That's what you're looking at. Those are like easy to swing and miss and not have a player type guys.
So that's what I was going to say in there is if it's 17, 18, 20 as the first plus for a player like that, like you say, they have a lot of drafted players. Take a swing on Dylan Cousins with one of those picks and some. I don't know.
That's not going to interest Buffalo. You're going to have to unload something off your roster. They're not. I'm just. I only brought the name up as a ideal fit.
Yeah, he'd be a good fit here.
He would be a good.
So what's Buffalo looking for?
Something that's going to help them win right now. They're not trying to. They don't need first round picks. They've had first round picks out the ass.
Exactly. So then make the fit for Calgary because it's easy to say trade 28. They don't want 28.
He said a name that was ideal for the Flames to go after. As far as why wouldn't you? You can't.
I prefaced it and said I cannot make the Flames and Sabres trade partners. They're illogical trade partners.
Yeah. And so then we're back to the empty aisle of right shot centers from 20 to 25. Like,
which highlights my point. How do you find difference makers? That's the biggest challenge the Flames are facing. And all I'm saying is with Wolf, it's getting further away from that than closer.
Saying the draft is a cop-out, though, because everyone not everyone. How many?
Everyone gets draft picks every year, and there's a bunch of bad teams that pick high.
Most impact players were drafted. Johnny Gaudreau was drafted in the 4th round, right? Like the most impact guys are drafted, unless maybe they're playing over in Russia and they slide through the cracks and they come over as a 24-year-old, right? So to say the draft is just an easy.
I just specifically think about centermen. That's all. Like they just don't have any.
Do you want to play the numbers game? Like, so Pinder, because you love the draft so much of NHL rosters, if you're talking just core players, so I'm talking your top 6 forwards, your top 4D, and your goalie. Mm-hmm. Do you want to guess how many on any given team were actually drafted by that team?
I don't really understand the exercise. Like, are we talking about moving players? Or
no, I'm talking about how do you assemble a team that. I'm not saying a team that competes. I'm saying how do you assemble a team, any team in the NHL, all 32 teams? This is what the numbers are. So your top 6 forwards, your top 4D, and your goalie. How many of those were drafted by the team they play on? Just give me a number.
25%?
18%.
Yeah. Like,
and you have to
you're saying that the only way teams get good is by keeping draft picks and drafting. And he said that like 80,
I'm saying you have to trade. Look at the Florida Panthers. Look at any team. You have 50+% of your roster is acquired via trade.
What you're saying is good players are drafted high. That's true. Yeah. But there's different ways.
I'm saying the Flames are not capable of drafting high. We've established this as fact. They will not bottom out.
And when they did, they took Sam Bennett, who was a center, and it didn't work out.
And he's fine. But again, they also had.
But it didn't work out for the Flames.
They also had Kachuk, and you also had Monahan. Like, you've done well at the top of the draft.
But again,
they don't have centers. Show me how they get a center. Everyone can talk about, go get this guy, go get that guy. These are the deals you can't make. They're the hardest deals to make. Go get a young center. Sounds great. It's what Connie said at his opening press conference. We're a year and a half in. They're no closer to getting a young center. Okay. You have to get those guys in the draft. Like, I get the whole, like, players move. It's not easy. There's no guarantees.
But like,
look, you make it sound so simple. Just trade all your good players, be bad, and welcome McDavid and McKinnon.
No, but what I would say.
You do. Every time we have this conversation.
You're simplifying what I'm trying to say.
They got to get stars. When the building's this and when Wolf is that, and you have stars. If it were only that easy.
Do you want a cup? Do you want to win a cup if you're Murray Edwards, or do you want to just get playoff revenue? That's the question.
So what should they do? Stop playing Wolf?
No, you keep playing Wolf. Wolf's great. That's unbelievable.
So then whose fault is it if
There's no fault, Dean. It's just you got to be smart. Like, don't extend Rasmus when he turns 30, the first year of an 8-year deal. That would be smart.
I don't understand these conversations, Frank. Like, I get confused because everyone else in the world wants Rasmus Andersson.
I like Rasmus.
What an asset to have. And
imagine trading him.
But I know, but now you're saying, and then just now he's no good.
Well, he doesn't match their window. That's all.
You don't know what their window is. You keep talking about this window, and you've got it all mapped out in your head.
So how much team control do they have on Wolf? Like, if you ink Wolf to an 8-year deal, that's their window.
Okay, so Why is Rasmus Andersson as a 31-year-old not going to be part of that window?
They already have a very reasonable facsimile of him in Uyghur. And
so you're
already
just
starting
going
to
win
see
with
a little bit of tail off in his underlying metrics. And I just think the better tactical move would be, here's a guy making $4.5 million that's probably going to get 9 on the open market when the cap jumps to 110. Go get some assets for him.
All right, Dylan Cousins.
Sure.
So that's one player, right? But as far as their window to win, take Rasmus out of it.
Mm-hmm.
What if Wolf starts? He's going to be top 10 in save percentage and goals against moving forward.
He might finish. He might get Vezina votes this year.
What if that's what you're dealing with now? He's not a kid.
No,
he's in his early 20s.
It's the greatest thing that's happened all year.
So are you going to take 4 years of the start of his career and say, "Sorry, kid, we need to"?
We need to roll the dice.
He kind of already did that. They've suppressed him as long as they possibly could and handled him with kid gloves.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the bubble wrap's finally off. He's actually starting more than every other game now, despite having better numbers all year.
You've heard me. I've been saying it for years. I want the same approach. Yeah, I want top 5 picks that you can count on, or top 10, and you're like, yeah, we're going to build. The problem that you see in front of you, though, is that it ain't happening, and they aren't going to get there. So you might have to change your tact. I keep using it as an example, and they went a little bit off the board. And Sam Honzek played really well, started the season in Calgary, you don't hear his name. He was that big centerman, was he not?
No, he's drafted.
But so even if he wasn't, he was their high pick. He was our first rounder that we can't trade away the pick. We can't trade away first rounders.
He's never been the top prospect in the organization. It was always Wolf.
But going into that draft, you would have said you can't trade this pick.
Yeah, I agree. I think they could have done better with the pick. Gabe Perreault's sitting right there.
Okay, so
US MVP
but they didn't.
Again, Crystal, looking back, that's how it should have gone. But you don't have that luxury.
Fine. Yeah, he's a middle 6 player.
But just in general.
But the point we're making to you is that the draft.
So what pick was that?
15.
Yeah, exactly my point. If you're going to pick there, you're not going to get stars.
But you're
not the roster that Craig Conroy was handed. They're not capable of getting.
I don't know that that's true for me. I really don't.
You just saw Wolf beat Winnipeg by himself. Those are the points that keep you from a top 5 pick.
Unless you're buying out Huberdeau and moving Kadri and trading Andersson and cutting off Dustin Wolf's right leg. I'm sorry. I don't see them picking top 5. I don't. And I think they've come to that
top 5 with Uzi Saros this year. It happens.
If you want to, it could happen. Yeah.
So
okay.
that's your plan?
No. I'm not saying it's a plan. I'm just saying that even great goalies have years where their teams are bad. I'm sorry, Carey Price had teams.
You don't have to say sorry. I still don't understand the point you're making towards the conversation.
My point is that when you're getting 950 goaltending, don't start thinking your team's good. It's a goalie. And he's going to come back.
They're not thinking their team. I don't think they're under any disillusion. I don't think they're sitting here going, hey, we're better than we thought. I think they're saying this is kind of exactly the realm, the world. If you were to draw a circle on the NHL standings board before the season started and it said, will the Flames finish in this circle? It's within the realm of possibility. Yes?
That they
better than I would have expected, little on the high end of
the higher end of it, but still, if you were to say hey, we got to hope and pray and wish that our pets' heads fall off like the Nashville Predators this season, and we then somehow luck into it. That's a whole other thing.
Yeah, I'm not out here campaigning for the team to try to lose. I'm not. I just think that there's decisions coming forward that are going to be very telling about their approach, how far
they have to now, because they're now at the point where they're realizing exactly what I'm saying. As uncomfortable as it may be, we are in this spot. We have these pieces that are immovable objects, and therefore we have to adjust our approach, because as much as we would like to do scorched earth and have a full-scale rebuild potentially and get these top players, these star players, we are not capable.
I
for
agree
better or
with
for
you.
worse.
I was all in on the scorched earth policy for last year and even the start of this year. I'm like, they got to throw it out the window. They can't. And I think Wolf has answered those questions. You know,
He's underlined them. He's put an exclamation point at the end of it, which is
and so if you have that goal, and if you talk about Perek, our first round, he has to play with someone. Like Weegar and he needs to learn and play, even if he's going to be a star. He's got to have someone beside him, right? You can't him and Hanley.
No,
it ain't gonna work, right?
Yeah, no,
so if you're bringing him along, and this, like I've said, Andersson, sure, and all of this goes back to we don't know what the f you have to give up to get someone, and what's coming back. We can talk in the general idea, but you don't know exactly. And if Dylan Cousins is available, the Flames should be in the conversation to try and get him. If it means giving up the Wolf, probably not, right? Like, yeah, I know you're giggling, but that is the point of all.
Untouchable.
All these trades are sure. If it makes sense, you do it.
Right. And it's not just to put a bow on it. It's not to speed up the process, because that's the point, Pinder, that you've kept making, which is, oh, the timeline's going to speed up. That part I don't think is changing. It's just if you cannot bottom out, which again, I think we've highlighted, they can't, then what can we do in the meantime to push this along?
That's the thing. I think what it does is it eliminates the scorched earth. We're going to finish dead last, top 2, 3.
That's for sure.
It's just,
just that this summer they're going to have to. I keep bringing up Rasmus, and I feel like people are like, "Why do you hate Rasmus?" I love Rasmus. I think he's a great player.
Hey,
I think there's 6 teams in playoff spots that, there's probably 16 teams in playoff spots when you get there that are like, that would be a guy that's an upgrade on our right side second pair. And it's just like, we don't know what could it be, but like, that is the decision for me. That's going to be.
What do all those teams have in common, Pinder? All those teams are picking in the dead nuts late end of the first round.
Mm-hmm.
How's that helping the Flames?
Well, I didn't say anything about a return. I just think you'd get a lot of assets for him.
Assets that are what? Second rate?
I don't know. If you're Dallas, would you give up Maverick Bourque and some other assets for him? Like,
probably not.
Really?
They only got a second for Tanev.
Yeah, and he didn't have 2 years of control, and like is not the value that. I'm sorry, like Anderson's a more valuable asset.
Yes, thank you. But the point is, if let's say you're getting the first, where's Dallas finishing in the standings? They're trading Rasmus Andersson is not going to get you any closer to the star, is my point. If that's the mission, like truly what the mission is, then you have to be dead focused, blinders on. This is our mission, is to get star players. Getting the 24th overall pick from the Dallas Stars doesn't get you any closer. You might as well find a way to try and keep
what
Andersson.
You're missing is that their own pick would suddenly, I think, be a top 8 pick if they trade Rasmus. When Kevin Ball is your second best defenseman and your third is Jake Bean, you're not going to be out of the bottom 10. You aren't.
Okay. So then you want to walk in there and tell them this year?
No, I don't think it's an easy decision.
Like,
I don't think they'll do it. I don't think it's easy, but
what's that going to say to the rest of your team?
Totally. I get
the F out of here.
Yeah. And that's the first domino. And now it's like Blake Coleman's like, why am I here? And Nazem Kadri says, why am I here? I get it. Like, I'm not saying
you end up with the exact situation you had last year, which they worked so hard to get out of, which is 5 guys immediately raise their hand and say, I want out.
See, and this is not like it's Blue Monday, right, Dean?
Yeah, we feel blue today.
Yeah. So, like, just to make sure, you said put a bow on it. The problem with all of this in any scenario. So if Wolf's good, we'll keep Andersson. We got to get into playoffs, and this is where we're going to clump up for the next few years. They're going to get shit kicked in the playoffs
if they get in.
They don't have the high-end talent to compete in the playoffs. Wolf has to win them the series. They don't have the players, I don't think, that could elevate their game come playoff time to match the teams are going to be going up again.
Their top 2 centers are 34 and 35. Next year, they'll be 35 and 36. The year after that, they're 36 and 37. Like, this team will not be a legit contender until they find a stud center that's young.
Come on, Conroy, do your job. It's we've just
Our
figured
pins
it all
heads
out.
are falling off.
That's right.
I just love how we got to a point where Pinder just was like, well, next year they're going to be 35 and 36. And the year after they're going to be 36 and 37. Like
they have no young centers, Frank.
Works?
Like Zeri's been unreal that he could play center, but they don't have centers in the organization. They don't.
Okay.
Accurate though, Frank.
Accurate and impressive.
That's right. Appreciate you, pal. Have a good week. Go Birds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what we did there. There's a lot of
talked.
circling around, but
You know what we did? We did what a ton of people are talking about. Because you feel like, in a way, it's sexy. Let's bottom out. I want a number 1 pick with top 10. Get all these
Look at
picks.
this Macklin Celebrini guy. Holy.
Yeah.
Kale McCarr, 4th. Oh,
awesome.
yeah, you look at Colorado, you're like, oh, McCarr, top 4 pick. Rantanen, okay, that's top
There's
10
no
pick.
debating.
McKinnon, number 1. Landeskog,
That's where those guys get drafted.
all those cup teams have a bunch of high picks.
But I don't know what you do when you aren't that team that earned that pick. What do you do? Colorado stunk to get McKinnon.
Mm-hmm.
They were really bad.
And it worked. They won a cup.
So what do you do if you're Craig Conroy and your team we're not as bad as Colorado was there, or as Chicago was when they got Kane, or I mean, whatever the year may be.
Buffalo.
If they come back next year, do you think, if we sit in the summer, like pretend the season ends today, do you think this is a playoff team next year?
The bigger thing to me is, and I'm not wanting to answer your question, Wolf changes everything.
Yeah,
I think they're in the same
Goaltending
spot.
hides so many warts. You could be an awful team.
Look at
and
Kipper.
that's kind of what,
which is
like,
the problem.
Kipper for years.
To me, this conversation was about, does Wolf change it? And I think it does. It doesn't mean, oh, we're good now. Let's go get players.
No,
that's not it. It's okay. I guess we're not going to bottom right out.
Yeah.
So now what? Now where do we go from here?
This is all this circular conversation that's probably really annoying for some people is illustrating is that there is no simple, clear path of this is easy and suddenly we're good. No, and I know you're trying to say, oh, you just give me a bad draft, how you'll be good. No, like there is risk in all these paths. You can be old and not that good and have a great goaltender and finish 9th every year. Like
I saw that for a long time.
And it feels like that's what you're going to get this year, doesn't it? Like if they finish 9th in the West, you'd be
totally
shocked.
Think that's what they're going to get. And
right.
My stupid.
What do you do?
Yeah. What do you
bring everyone back and be like, hey, maybe next year we'll also finish 9th.
But like, is the best path not doing anything and just like Frank said? Because I keep going back to this comment too. Yes, stupid. We had noodles on. We need to go get a centerman. And easy to do. Their scoring's terrible. If they'd have done it months ago, but I guess the question is, do you go with ride it out? Or do you put a plan? No, this is my hard and true.
Yeah, like if you feel you're going to be mucky middle, do you languish or do you say, well, we may as well try and get in? Let's try and be a playoff team.
Or sell.
And if it doesn't mean go get the 31-year-old UFA and give up a first rounder for it, but it just changes maybe your philosophy that you had coming into the season as to a 5-year plan, a 3-year plan.
If your fear is mucky middle, I don't know that this year's been easing your fears.
No, and it doesn't ease my fears for next year because what's the team next year? It's
exactly
the exact same effing thing.
And that's why I think the Rasmus decision is so key. And it doesn't have to go one way or the other. I'm not saying there's right and wrong. We don't know what the return would be. We don't know what a salary ask is, but this team's just good enough that you could, for the next few years, think, yeah, we'll spend and add, and we got all this cap space. But that's what you got here. Right? Like you're going to Troy Brouwer and Travis Hamonic and James Neal yourself.
That's what we're saying is not the case.
Yeah,
no, but that's what do you mean that's not the case? Like
you're saying we got to be careful that if that is your approach, please don't make it your approach.
Yeah.
No one is saying
that's the fear is that you have $20 million cap space and you have this young goalie. It's like, well, shoot. I mean, maybe we could dip our toe in.
But I'll just say this. I have way more confidence this time around that that's not going to happen.
I have.
Do you share
I have confidence, but I'll tell you what. There's going to be a lot of temptation out there. Darcy Regier was a GM in Buffalo forever. No owner, no money, no nothing. Ran it tight as tight can be, and had decent success because there was we have to operate this.
There's a path.
Owner comes in. Here's a checkbook. Go make it happen. complete shit show since.
Yeah, what was it? Like Ville Husso? No, it was the
defenseman, Ville
guy
Husso.
Not Husso. Ville
Leno.
And then the 8-year deal for a D-man.
Yeah.
Like it was
Ehrhoff.
It was a team that knew when assets got to a certain point, we have to turn them into younger assets.
Yep.
And that was their philosophy on how they built. And it made sense. And when they had to abandon that, they didn't know what to do.
No, and that's to my point with Conroy is he is a new GM. He knows the game. I trust all that shit. But you got $20 million in cap space. You're looking at that going, if I had another 40-point guy, we've got more points. We are going to make the playoffs. I didn't spend any of that money. Like there's going to be temptations there both ways. You better have I hope he has a real clear idea of what he wants to do, because going back and forth like we're doing, probably not. Like you're weighing all kinds of options, but I don't like the idea that our GM's doing that.
And using the cap space is different than selling off picks for players. How do we weaponize? How do we best use this? If it gets us a decent player that doesn't, maybe he is older, but if it brings with it still an asset, but can help us, that I think there is that kind of an opportunity. But did Sabres fans have confidence in Darcy Regier back then?
No.
When they had
Pagula came in?
Regeerts for about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no regrets. You can't.
No, there's no
sense. Can't do it.
They should be a bank at the deadline.
Yeah.
Like, you know what Arizona did for like 5 years? It was, we'll take an expensive guy, we'll eat half, we'll move it along, give us a pick. And again, I don't want to fall into the whole like prospect porn trap where all your young players are great, but like Henry Muse in the third, you redraft, he's a first round player. Like there's some great players that the draft class they just had has been received by people that are very smart on the draft as one of the best they've seen in ages. And so if you can just keep adding seconds and thirds, be a bank, use those first. You got Vegas's unprotected.
You could just as easily spin it and say, okay, we've got some prospects that we like. We can move forward. And everybody's prospects in 8 months after the draft, everyone's still very high about them.
I know what you're saying.
It's too close to it still.
This isn't Honzik. Like this was a superb draft.
But why isn't Honzik part of that? Their draft? Like they picked Honzik.
They did.
You don't get to.
You
don't get to shuffle that pick away and say that's not part of
he's probably their fifth or sixth best prospect right now. Like
but why is that okay? Like you're saying, on one hand, they do the best job ever.
No, I said
on the other hand, right? Like it's an averaged out thing. Like you can't hand pick that 7th round pick that turned into a superstar and go, these guys are good at drafting.
Maybe there was a deal 3 years ago that would have included that pick that would have made you better today with a player, right?
Yeah, like an Eichel or something. Sure. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
So, no. And again, it was Connie's first draft. I look at Treliving's first draft and it had Brian Burke's fingerprints all over it. It was the Hunter Smith and big, huge dudes. It was not really, I think what I'm hopeful is that Connie's built the scouting department that he wants in his vision, rather than show up to the draft how many months into the job and working off lists that the other GM assembled that staff.
Well, I'll ask you, do you have confidence in?
I do. I think he will be very patient, and I think he's not falling for the fool's gold of like, if you give this team average goaltending, where are they in the standings? That's what I keep asking myself. I think they're right where we thought they'd be. So don't trick yourself into thinking that you've got this great team so much as you have an elite goalie and a hardworking, competent team that's well coached and has structure, but you're no closer to contention than you were a year ago.
But
like you've gone from bottom 10 to middle 10, and that's almost a worse spot to be in a weird way.
I know you want it. I know you want it badly to work out.
No, I don't want anything. I'm just thinking, like, I hope this organization we've watched for 25 years and there's been too much mucky middle. I don't want to see more of that.
Well, here's the thing. Truthfully, though, I mean, if you want to get really bad and you want to be ready, you should trade Wolf.
No. No, Wolf you have for 9 years. That you don't trade Wolf at all. No. What you should do is trade Rasmus because he turns 30 in the first month of his new deal. That's the trade you make. And you're not going to be out of the top 10 picks if you trade Rasmus.
I think that's my confidence is high if he chooses a path. And if he chooses a path to move Rasmus Andersson, then move them all.
Yeah, I agree. It would be Kadri and Coleman would follow.
There's no effing reason to trade Rasmus Andersson and not anyone else.
Yeah, like you're stuck with Huberdeau. It's not a movable contract because of the way it's structured. And that's not to say
Kadri, Coleman.
But Kadri, it's like, okay, now you got to work on like how much money do we to get that out? Coleman's like, I got 2 years left. He's won cups. He's a very nice third line player. It would be a very, very significant direction chosen. And I wonder if they're scared to make that decision. Because you see the Buffaloes, and it isn't that easy, and there are failed rebuilds. And what about ticket sales?
Well, and
what about
they're going to have a sense of what this team is all about and how they get along. We talk about the dysfunction of the Canucks and why they're not having success. Part of the reason the Flames have to be having success is that, to me anyway, it feels like they do like playing together. Like it.
And there's no free agents this year. Like, I'm sorry, last year
got
that
rid of
hung
the guys
over the whole
that
room.
want out. Yeah,
the whole room. And so, what is it like next year when Rasmus is in his walk year? I don't know. Have they got him signed by then? Is he a free agent in November? Like that'll affect the room, just like it affected Lindholm and Hanifin and Tanev, Zadorov. It's a little quiet spot here, but they're really not. They haven't accomplished a ton. It's amazing that what you hoped Wolf could be, it looks like he's going to become.
We'll move on because I feel like we'll be talking about Rasmus for a long time.
I agree,
but that is one where I still don't know where I get it. You should be able to move him and get something great. But what if you don't? Does that?
Well, you don't do the deal.
Then you don't do it. So then if you don't do the deal, are you talking about signing him? So you maybe are.
I don't really worry about the market being
because you're not going to let him go to UFA.
Can't.
So you
can't.
What are you going to do?
And so,
but another year from now, you're going to know your team better too, and some of the kids that come along. So maybe move.
What's the number? And then the other thing is like all their D-men that you like that have some ceiling are righties. It's Ristevich, it's Peric, it's Muse. They're all righties.
Oh, and they're all so unproven and young.
No, I know, but some of them will be really good players. They won't all be, but they're just all righties. It's wild. Yeah. And that's not the end of the world. Like Weegar plays the left side. I get it, but hey guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out more of our content right here on the Flames Nation YouTube page. We had a bunch of great long form interviews. You can check out some videos we've done as well outside of the studio. And of course, if you want more writing or merchandise stuff, flamesnation.ca or nationgear.ca. Appreciate you watching.